Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of Getting In, a College Coach Conversation. I'm your host, Ian Fisher. I haven't had an opportunity to host the show for quite a while. And I spoke with our producer, and I was assured that it's not because I've been doing anything wrong so far, but I'm very excited to have the opportunity to be back today, to get a chance to talk to all of you who are listeners, and especially to talk to our wonderful guests. We're heading into September, which is a very important month in the college application and college finance process. There are a number of key conversations that we want to have today that are really pragmatically focused. We're going to talk a little bit about finalizing the college list in our final segment, and we're also going to have a discussion about supporting documents within the college application in our second segment today. So for those of you who are seniors who are getting ready to apply this fall, those are some things to keep your eye on. With our first segment today, we're going to talk a little bit about finance. And while I think that the conversation is probably most relevant for seniors, I do think that there's some orientation here to concepts in college finance that are helpful for everyone who might be thinking about college at some point into their future. And so, because I'm not the finance expert, never have been, never will be, we've got a great guest here from our College Coach finance team joining us, Amy Yorsaner. Hey, Amy, welcome to the show.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you so much.
I'm very glad to have you here. And we're going to talk about something that I think I often take for granted as knowledge that folks might have when it comes to applying to college, that I think is a great foundation for people to begin to unpack aid and cost of attendance and exactly what they're going to be paying when their student goes off to college. So discount rate. Let's just discuss, what does it mean to have a tuition discount rate? What is that term? And when people encounter that, whether they're reading it in news articles or it's something that a financial aid officer is sharing with them, how can they begin to understand what that means?
Essentially, like a tuition discount is like any other discount. You can go to a store and get a discount. So it's really not paying full price for that product. And in which case, what we're talking about, that product is education, right? So the tuition discount is really referring to any kind of gift aid, scholarships or grants that a school uses to reduce your tuition costs. So it essentially means you're not paying the sticker price for tuition.
And sticker price is a term that we hear quite often as
Yes.
well. And usually it's associated with cars because literally there's a sticker on the window of a car in the dealership. Right. I've been told you never pay that price when you walk in to buy a car. But there are folks out there who will pay the sticker price for a college education, and there are many folks who will not. How do you help families to think a little bit about what the sticker price is in relation to their likely cost when their student chooses to enroll at that institution?
Sure. So when we talk in terms of price, we talk in terms of two prices. Yes, that sticker price, the people who will pay full price. And then there's something we call net price. And that is that price that you're going to be expected to pay kind of after any scholarships or financial aid offers. So when you're thinking about that, like what goes into the cost of attendance, which is the sticker price. So when you see cost of attendance, think, I guess, sticker price. That encapsulates all direct charges that you'll see from a school. So that's tuition, room, food, things like that that are directly charged from the school. And then you have all these indirect costs like books and supplies, transportation, personal expenses. Those expenses you have, they exist, but you're never going to see them as a charge on the bill. So all of that makes up the cost of attendance, whereas the net price is kind of that difference after any kind of aid or discount has been applied. And so you really want to focus on what's that net price. So I think it's easy for families to get caught up in, oh, that sticker price is too high. I'm not even going to apply because why bother? I can't afford that. When you really do need to take a look at what are they offering you before you make that ultimate choice. Just go in eyes wide open about what the differential is.
And so you could be walking on a college campus on a tour this fall and you encounter 3 different students, and those students are paying 3 different prices for the same education based on tuition discounting, which is being provided by the institutions. Absolutely. They could also all be paying the exact same price. We don't know that for sure, right? But maybe they're paying different prices.
Right.
Now,
And if you talk to
typically,
your neighbors and your friends and whatever, they're going to be like, well, I paid this and I paid this. So that's
yeah,
what some families expect to pay. And
yeah.
you can't compare that way. You have to really look at your circumstances.
And that is different from, say, going to an online shopping sale and you get 15% off and you
Right.
can guarantee that you're going to pay the same price as somebody else who has that same discount. And so I think
Exactly.
that's where some of that trickiness comes into play.
Yes,
Now,
absolutely.
a lot of people, when they talk about aid or when they talk about discounting their tuition, they bring up the concept of scholarships, right? My kid
Hmm.
needs to get a scholarship. I have to have a
Right.
scholarship to go to school, but that's just one form of discounting, right? Can you talk about the different ways that schools engage in discounting and the different kinds of discounts that might be available to families?
Sure. I say the two most common that you're going to hear are the merit-based aid, which
Mhm.
is based on your academic profile, and that's set by the Office of Admissions. And then there's need-based financial aid, which is based on your financial circumstances. Another common one that the families may be familiar with is athletic funding. All of these are different types of ways that the school will utilize discounts. Those are the most common ways.
So not everybody's going to be qualified for every kind of scholarship, right? And I think that
Right.
the obvious example is with athletics, right? If
Yes.
you can't, run a mile in, less than 7 minutes, you're probably not going to be getting on the track team, for example. That's a pretty simple example. But I think with scholarships, with academic scholarships, it's sometimes a little bit harder for folks to know whether they're going to be in that bucket or not. Are they someone that's going to qualify for a
Right.
discount or a scholarship through merit aid? Any recommendations for how families can start to think about, or at least get a broad idea of whether a discount might apply to them from a merit standpoint?
Sure. If you guys haven't caught on by now, like we're talking about discounts and the way that we've talked about it, what I want you to understand, if nothing else, is that whether it's merit or financial need-based aid or athletic, it's recruitment funding. Okay, so they're targeting particular audiences this way with how they allocate these funds.
Yeah.
Merit aid is based on academic profile. So where a student's academic profile exceeds that of the typically admitted student at that school, is where we would expect a student to have merit funding. So if you were looking at your college list, your probable or safety schools is where you have the highest capacity to receive merit scholarship.
Right.
And it
Right.
all also depends on what the school's budget is that year and where are they recruiting? What are they targeting? What population? Who are they looking for?
Mhm. It was very interesting. I was at a block party this past Friday, and I was speaking with a woman who graduated from Whitman College back in 1961, and she mentioned that she had set up a very small scholarship in order to attract students who had immigrated from a certain population of Eastern European countries, because she had come from Russia and she thought that that was a great contribution to the college. And so she wanted to set up a scholarship to help support students who were also coming from that area. And it was she was awesome. It was a really fun conversation to have with her, but a really great example of how an institution might have certain priorities that are probably invisible to applicants.
Right.
It may be a student that is applying from Ukraine, has no idea that there's this scholarship at Whitman College waiting for them, but Whitman is aware of that. And that
Right.
will affect the recruitment of that student and the discount rate that that student then gets when they actually arrive on campus. There's also,
Exactly. Yeah,
and there's
sorry.
there's also like a very important like distinction here for those schools that are really, really selective, right? So a lot of people will
Right.
say, well, I can get a scholarship to an Ivy, or I can get a scholarship to a school that maybe doesn't offer merit aid. How do people think about aid at schools that don't offer that kind of academic scholarship? And is there still money available at those schools?
The type of money that would be available at those schools is typically going to be need-based financially. They dedicate their funding solely to creating economic diversity on campus.
Right.
That's really what, when I said that, even financial need-based aid is recruitment funding, that's what they're looking to do. They're looking to make sure that they create economic diversity on campus. And at that level of competitiveness that it takes to get into those schools, they're already accepting the top students and of their applicant pool, right? So
Right.
how do they then decide who's more meritorious than another candidate? To me, I always say, I heard the saying a long time ago, but it's like nailing jello to a tree. It's impossible at that level. So, how they have decided to kind of allocate those resources is based on need-based financial aid and,
Yeah.
and focusing on that economic diversity. So if someone's saying that they got a scholarship from the Ivies for merit and academic, not that I've seen. It's really unrealistic to kind of have that expectation. If you can qualify for need-based aid, then yes, that is a definitive possibility there.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, when we think about it in the admission side, it is hard enough to identify the students that you want to admit.
Right.
Never mind taking a smaller subset of that group and deciding that that group is deserving of aid or more deserving of a merit aid than some of the other students are. That doesn't mean that money doesn't exist out there. I had a student this past year who qualified for a stipend for research at an Ivy where he was offered admission. And so that is a possibility that occasionally comes up, but we wouldn't call that a scholarship. It's based on further work, further effort that he's going to undertake as a student at that institution.
And for returning students, if it's offered at the returning student level, unless, you know, there's a unique circumstances, kind of like what you're mentioning, like the departments would have the information on that. It wouldn't necessarily go through admissions or financial aid. It would be kind of departmental funding as a returning student, like what opportunities exist to explore the pathway that you're looking for.
Now, Amy, I want to sort of step outside of this and just think a little bit more conceptually for a second. And I don't know if you have an answer to this, but I think it's a question that a lot of people will probably intuitively ask, which is, why do colleges do this? You know, why not just set the price lower? You've essentially got a sticker price for tuition, and at many institutions, the discount rate on average is going to be pretty significant. And so a lot of students are actually paying less than the full freight.
Right.
Why do colleges do this? Why not just lower the price for everybody? What are the institutional priorities that make this a part of a recruitment strategy?
I think part of it is, you know, what is that positive signal in your brain that you get like when you've saved, right? So part of it is optics. It's school. I mean, schools would say it allows them to send positive signals to prospective students, you know, regarding what quality of education they're going to have, or, you know, that this is how they show appreciation for students and promote educational value. So I would say that that's their perspective, you know, from a purchaser of services and goods, you know, think about the optics of that versus that lower price. Whether or not whatever price is set, we always want a discount. We always want to pay less. So whether you have that sticker price that everybody pays or you get the discount, which one feels right in your brain? Like, so conceptually and logically, we could sit there and say, if everybody just paid the same price, it would be fine. But then there'd still be people who want that discount. So for me, I think it's a little bit of the positive mental energy about what happens when you get a discount.
I think that's right. There's a big part of that that comes into play. And I think that that's very intuitive for us as consumers to consider. We have to be reminded that of course, schools are competing with one another. And so a school that is able to offer a student a scholarship might have a leg up against a school that doesn't offer that scholarship, even if the actual net price between those two schools is the same, because one school has a lower sticker price. You also alluded to economic diversity on campus. And I think that probably a lot of colleges would say, not publicly, that there are students who can pay the full tuition, and we want those students to pay the full tuition at our campus because it helps to support students who cannot afford to pay the full tuition and supports the financial aid for those students as well. Is that part of that calculation that colleges are figuring out? Like, how can we think about tuition prices and set those in order to maximize our revenue?
So it's not, I don't think any schools, and I've worked in schools at the college level prior to coming to Bright Horizons College Coach. I've worked in higher education financial aid offices for 20 years. And I would never say that I ever thought about looking at financial aid, need-based financial aid as a recruitment tool. But it really is about, okay, you know, do you want all of one type of student? You know, the experiences that people have at different income levels is vastly different. How people got to where they had to be, you know, the approaches may have been very different. And so bringing those different perspectives to campus is important. But in a financial aid office, do they say, okay, well, we already have too many people at this income level? No, those conversations don't happen. Schools set their budget for their need-based financial aid. And if you qualify, you get it. So it's not like a school would exclude people at this, you know, income level versus that income level if they are need blind. So let me put the caveat onto that. If a school is need aware, then into your acceptance decision, then that would, you know, then they would potentially bring that into an admit decision, but not necessarily a finance decision. If they've accepted you and you've applied on time by deadlines, then they're going to review you for that financial need. That economic diversity is just kind of a byproduct. Like in the back of, schools' minds, yes, it exists. They want to create that diversity, which is why they offer it, but it's not the glaring outward sign of recruitment, if you will.
That's great. And really good perspective to have from inside a financial aid office, which is one of the reasons that when we hire college finance experts, we are only hiring folks that have worked in those financial aid offices because they can offer that perspective. In the final time that we have, Amy, got about a minute.
Sure.
Any recommendations for students who are sewing up their college lists? We're going to talk about that in a later segment, but are starting to look for these kinds of recruitment aid. How can they be on the lookout for opportunities to maximize their discount?
I would certainly look and make sure you have a balanced list, whether do you have, yes, having reach schools on your list is great, but that's the least likely scenario for getting kind of merit scholarship. And depending on where your family's financial circumstances are, which you can check, if the schools do have net price calculators, they are in the process of updating those with all the reg changes coming down. That's a whole nother topic of discussion, but really be looking at those balanced lists and think about fit and program. So does the program, depending whether it's probable, possible, or reach, are they competitive programs? So where they land on the list doesn't mean that the value of that education is lower. So I would be looking at that balanced list. And if you are wanting to maximize those dollars, then spend some time taking a closer look and a deeper dive at that probable and possible list that you may see. If you have the college coach benefit, you may be able to do that customized college list. But if you're working with somebody creating that list and you can identify where they land, then I would look at the wide array and not necessarily focus on that sticker price that we were talking about before, but looking at, yes, there's a sticker price. Have the conversation about what can we realistically afford going into those application processes and say, okay, this school's really expensive, but if they come in with this kind of aid package, we may be able to consider them a reality. So go in with that mindset instead of assuming that you're just going to be able to make that happen. Go in with what you can realistically afford, what's that benchmark, and then see, where the aid is to see if that really is a reality. But I wouldn't cut yourself off from applying just because of that sticker price. So balanced list and don't look at the sticker price per se, just keep it as a factor, not the decider.
That's great. And I think there are some great little nuggets that you mentioned there with intending to do so, but I don't know if our listeners picked up on it, but we'll return to that in our final segment. We talk a little bit more about finalizing that college list and what a balanced list looks like. So appreciate that foreshadowing, Amy. It was great to have you on the show today. You're welcome back anytime.
I'd be happy to be here anytime. So thanks so much. Good luck, everybody.
Appreciate it. Folks, when we come back, we're going to talk about some supporting documents within the applications. So don't go away.